This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Our underground network is standing by at the drop zone to distribute.
The transmission is being jammed. Looks like the Empire came out to welcome us.
Attention, Rebel Convoy. This system is under Imperial control. Stand down or be destroyed.
What a surprise. Star Wars Sabers and Scoundrels.
Starships.
Carabast.
Yeah. Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. The Scoundrels Special Edition.
Greetings, Scoundrels. We're back. This is Dennis, and I have the Dark Lord of the Shtick, Darth Taxus, with me.
Ahoy, ahoy.
In this Scoundrel Special Edition, we are covering Twin Suns. But first, how are things with you, Taxus?
I'm recovering. I had a really fun weekend.
Big Easy wasn't so easy, was it?
Big Easy was a little hard. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad you made it back safely. So if you are new to the show, welcome. Normally, Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels features news, discussion, lots of shenanigans, and listener feedback in our Silence Fools section. In this, our Scoundrel Special Editions, we pared down the show to really just a discussion. Lately, most of these discussions have been about recent episodes of Rebels. However, before we get to this episode, I've kind of gotten into the habit of preparing some trivia questions that are somewhat related to the current episode for Taxus.
Oh.
So, yeah, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you actually stand a good chance on these. You did really well last time. So first, on what planet did Savage Opress first find Maul?
It was that junk planet. Oh, man. I'm not even going to figure it out. I'm just going to pass. Okay. I can't remember. Right.
That was Lotho Minor.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I wouldn't have remembered it if I hadn't looked it up. Question number 2. What were Maul's first robotic legs made from?
Wasn't it like a spider?
Well, I'm sorry. After the spider.
After the spider.
Yes. What was the spider part of his body replaced with?
Well, they were robot legs, but
it
was on Dathomir.
Right.
I want to say gyro meat, but
nice try, but no.
Oh man. They're like a chicken walker legs, weren't they?
Not quite. Okay. They were you gonna take another stab at this, or are you gonna pass?
I remember what they look like. I just don't remember specifically.
Well, they weren't taken wholesale from something, but they were made from battle droid parts from when the clone army or the droid army attacked the Night Sisters. So Mother Talzin used those. Okay. True or false? Maul killed Adi Gallia.
I'm going to say, Okay, that was, no, false.
That's correct.
Okay.
Do you know who it was?
Didn't she meet her end pretty early on in the series in that hive thing?
No.
Oh.
She wasn't there. That was Luminara.
Oh, that's right. No, I don't know who it was.
That was Savage Opress. Killed her on Florum in that conflict with Hondo and his group. Okay. What organization rescued Maul and Savage Opress and fixed Maul's legs after the battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Hondo on Florum?
It's Death Watch?
Correct.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, question number 5. Who did Maul slay to take command of Mandalore?
That was Pre Vizsla.
Correct. You're doing well. So, next question. Question number 6. Who defeated Maul in a saber duel that also saw the death of Savage Opress?
Well, wasn't it Palpatine?
Darth Sidious, correct.
Darth Sidious, yeah. Okay.
Okay. And question number 7. How many moons does Tatooine have?
Two.
Incorrect. It has 3.
3. Dang it.
You see 2 of them in this episode repeatedly. And I don't suppose you can name any of these moons.
Larry, Moe, and Curly?
Nice try. Now, I had no idea until I looked this up on Wikipedia, but they're Gomrison, Gurmesa, and Chanini.
Chanini.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, Chanini. Come here.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, so where'd they get that from?
I meant to note the source, but I forgot to. But it was under the canon section.
Wow.
So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 7. Not bad.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. That's all right. I'm not firing all cylinders yet. So yeah.
Well, it's not like I designed these all to be easy. There's a couple gimmies, but hey.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Taxus, sound the alert. From this point forward, this episode will be diving into the details of Twin Suns, and there are spoilers ahead. Here is the episode summary. After arriving on Tatooine, Darth Maul searched in vain for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Finally frustrated, he used a holocron to reach out to Ezra. Fearing that Kenobi was alive and in trouble, Ezra disobeyed Hera and Kanan and went to Tatooine while Chopper stowed away on his A-Wing. Upon reaching Tatooine, Ezra and Chopper are attacked by Tusken Raiders. Although they escape, their A-Wing is destroyed. Reaching the desert plains, the two forge ahead while Maul mocks them. Ultimately, Ezra succumbs to the heat and Chopper runs out of power. Fear not, though, as Obi-Wan arrives and rescues them. When Ezra awakens at Kenobi's campsite, Maul is not far behind. The old Jedi tells Ezra to leave. Reluctantly, Ezra does so. Kenobi, and Ezra then engage in a quick but intense duel, with Kenobi emerging as the victor. Maul dies in Kenobi's arms, seemingly at peace. Ezra returns to Chopper Base and pledges to support his rebel family. The episode concludes with Kenobi overlooking the Lars family homestead as Baru calls to Luke. Some of those names are easy to trip over. Yeah, so, I don't know. I'm going to get out there first. This was a fantastic episode. Okay. I really, really enjoyed it, and this is one of the highlights of the season for me. Well, what did you think?
I'm with you just because of the culmination of the final battle, so to speak. That of course tops any other objection I might have, to anything. So yeah, it was really great. This was definitely something all the fans were ready to see. We were excited for it. We've been chomping at the bit for it ever since, the beginning of the season when, I think even we've been chomping at the bit for it, even since last season finale. Because we knew what would end up.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and of course this episode has its roots in Maul showed up in the season finale from season 2, and then in the Holocrons of Fate and the Visions and Voices episode really what set this one up earlier this season. Yeah. So like you said, this is something this season has been building towards, and we knew it was only a matter of time. So with that, we'll just kind of dive more into some of the details of the episode. So things open up with Maul wandering around on Tatooine, which they did an amazing job for something that is really, for the most part, a desert world. They did a fantastic job portraying it. In some ways, I think it is superior to what they did on Lothal and some of the other planets that they've been featuring in Rebels. Yeah,
the detail that they put into every single aspect of it. When I think I remember reading that Filoni basically storyboarded it from when Ezra is about to strike out to the desert forward. And that, just thinking about the detail of that little canyon arch that they're walking out of, and all the scrub brush around them. I mean, they had to do that. They had to do that, or it just wouldn't have felt like the Tatooine we all know and love.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and they made that place perfectly desolate, and Maul's been wandering out there and gets frustrated, and he it's amazing, and I know they brought this up during the Rebels Recon, that he knew the planet that Obi-Wan was on, and most of that planet is deserted. But even then, Kenobi was just hanging out in his hut, I guess, and still was difficult to find. He doesn't really want to be found. Not that everyone knows who the hermit's name is that lives in that hut.
Yeah.
And Kenobi was, we come to find out, was perfectly content just to leave him out there. He didn't have any plans on fighting Maul just because he came to Tatooine looking for him.
It's almost like how Palpatine was able to shield himself from the Jedi.
But just...
Well, I don't remember if it's canon or not, but I remember, at least in some of the older stories, that he actually had a technique that would hide his true being when he was in the presence of Jedi, so that they couldn't detect the Force in him,
I don't really remember that being a new established in canon anywhere, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, he was powerful in the Force, and he was able to keep himself from being detected, and he was right there under everyone's noses. But so Maul's had enough, and he figures that no amount of searching is going to lead him to Kenobi. He needs to draw him out, and the only way he can think of to do that is to prey upon Kenobi's sense of nobility by summoning Ezra, because he knows that Ezra will respond, and he'll come to this planet, and at some point he'll get desperate. Kenobi will know this, since he's a Force user, and come to his aid. And that's what happens.
Yeah, and I guess some people had some issue with the whole Ezra connectivity thing. I think he's just being used as he's being used as a plot device to a certain extent, right?
I don't entirely agree with that.
Okay. But the purpose...
but go ahead.
I mean, I'm not saying all the way. I mean, I'm hoping there's some sort of ramifications from his actions, whether they be good or bad or whatever. But, why would Maul not just start slaughtering people left and right, to get Kenobi's attention? Or, why pick Ezra? I guess is what I'm saying, And probably because if he started slashing people with a lightsaber, that would probably draw the attention of, Palpatine and Vader.
Or word would get out and everyone would band against him. I mean, it's he's out there in the desert, and while he is a former Sith Lord, he's not invincible. And he would probably do well against any dozen Tatooine settlers. If enough of them get out there, then who's to say he'd be able to take them all on, especially when he's kind of in a weakened state. He's been wandering out there. He's frustrated. It's not like he has unlimited resources. I also think that, he's been bent on making Ezra his apprentice, and calling him here to Tatooine and having him part of this act, might help him get closer to that goal, bending Ezra to his will.
You're right, because he does say later to him, I'll see you soon, apprentice. Which, I'm wondering if that's prophetic in a way. But anyway.
Yeah, we'll get to that part of it. But, so Chopper, we'll kind of get briefly through Ezra's voyage to Tatooine, but Maul uses that bit of the Sith holocron to kind of that holocron and the Jedi holocron are now linked, and so he kind of activates that old message from Obi-Wan Kenobi warning about the fall of the Jedi Order, right? And then the Sith holocron activates with Maul's voice and he calls out, and so Ezra has been fixated on defeating the Sith and overthrowing the Empire, and his part of that vision that started in Holocrons of Fate and then moved over to Visions and Voices was that something to do with twin sons, and then it was Obi-Wan Kenobi was the key to defeating the Sith, and so he's obsessed with that, and that's why he decides to disobey Hera's orders. Her point I thought was interesting, which was that if Kenobi were still alive, he would be there helping them fight the Empire.
Right.
And so I guess that speaks volumes as to how well Kenobi's true purpose and his fate have been hidden.
Yeah, Bail's been telling everybody he's dead.
Right.
It makes you wonder if Ahsoka even knew.
That's a good question. That's really, Rex didn't know. Rex was the one that says that Bail Organa confirmed that Kenobi was dead.
And I don't think in the Ahsoka novel there was any mention of, I think Bail was thinking about Kenobi, but I just remember him thinking, that's something I better keep close to the vest.
Yeah, well, we found out in Rogue One that he at least let Mon Mothma know.
Right.
Because she, asked about his Jedi friend or something to that effect. And then essentially that's when Bail decided to send Leia after him. So, okay. I absolutely love, he didn't have the biggest part, but I love Chopper in this episode.
Yeah, me too.
He decides to tag along with Ezra. And so he sneaks into the A-Wing, which... that seems amazing to me that he was able to pull that off. And then when Ezra, it's a 2-seater, it's a training vehicle. And so when Ezra gets to Tatooine, all of a sudden you see Chopper, peek his head out from behind Ezra's chair. And this episode more than any other, I felt like you really could understand what he was saying.
Yeah, me too.
In a lot of parts. So that was a great addition. And then they fight off those Tuskens before Maul ultimately slays the Tuskens. I think Maul basically used the Tuskens to destroy the A-Wing and get them out and lost into the desert so that they would be desperate and, Kenobi would come looking for them.
I like how Chopper in that scene, like when Ezra's like, no, I got to go out here and got to do this. Chopper's like, and it's sort of like when it's almost a flip of R2-D2 and 3PO.
Yes, very much so. That was a fantastic scene because Chopper didn't want to go out in the desert. He knew that he was low in power, that sand on that plane was going to be terrible for him. And Ezra didn't really want him along in the first place. He has this complex that he's always trying to look out for his friends, and that's why he wanted to do this thing on his own. But Chopper came along anyway, so Ezra is perfectly happy for Chopper to go find some settlement and be safe. But this was, I don't know, I want to say it was really a new side to Chopper because we've kind of seen it.
Yeah.
But he really made that hard choice, which was he really wanted to go find comfort, to find this village. But like you were suggesting, he just kept looking back at Ezra, looking over towards the ridgeline, looking back at Ezra. And then, I'd love to get the translation of that, what he must have been cussing and swearing under his breath. Well, he finally made the decision to follow Ezra.
He even exhales.
Yes.
He goes,
yeah, that was superb.
That was really superb. Funny. Hey, I just thought of something though. The trap for Ezra, was just that little bit of a triangle off the Sith holocron that Maul had. Right. Well, Ezra collected it. He's got it. Right, and he's got like all the other pieces, I think, back on board the Ghost. So now, does he have all the pieces to both holocrons again?
I guess he does. I don't know, because those things exploded back in Visions and Voices.
But they still have some weird power. I mean,
they work to some degree. I don't know that every part remained intact. I didn't know that Maul got away with one. I didn't recall that happening. That may have been plot element of convenience for this episode, but he does. But that's potential if that's what you're suggesting, that could come back in season 4. I'm kind of putting aside this whole dark side potential for Ezra, and I'm really going to be upset if that emerges next season after I've finally put that to rest in my own mind. But
there was mention of the ancient Sith Lord who made that holocron and the weapon that she designed and everything, and I thought it sounded almost like they were going to bring it back up again at some point in the future.
They could. I think we're getting a bit off on a tangent though with this. Let's maybe return to that a little bit later.
Sure.
But so Chopper finally runs out of power, and Ezra begins to panic. That was kind of a touching scene.
Yeah, it was.
For as big a pain as Chopper can be, he really is a loyal member of the crew.
Yeah, he calls him buddy, right?
Yeah, well, he and Zeb and Ezra kind of have the Three Stooges thing going on for a while, but they're the brothers of the crew. And Sabine has always been the big sister, and then Hera and Kanan take on the father and mother figure, roles. But and then Ezra begins to have his own Force-induced hallucinations. Lashes out at Maul with his lightsaber when he wasn't there, and finally passes out. And we then get the introduction of Kenobi, which I thought was fantastic. I thought that was perfect. You saw the boots show up, and then you get the silhouette against the sun of him standing there in his hood. Yeah, that was cool. I just kind of wanted him to say, hello there, almost when he did it. But having it flash forward to the nighttime, I thought that was, it was really nice the way they introduced him. He really didn't have that much screen time, did he? No, but I thought it was appropriate. First of all, when it comes to Kenobi, I thought Steve Stanton did a wonderful job replicating the voice. That was eerily similar to Alec Guinness. Simply phenomenal. That man has got quite a range. From Admiral Raddus, AP5, Grand Moff Tarkin, and now Kenobi. That's quite a range right there. There's a lot of great voice actors out there that do many wonderful voices, but when you hear them often enough, you can hear the underlying talent underneath it. You can kind of start to recognize them, or you can tell that an actor is doing these other voices even though they may not sound identical to something else. Stanton is really talented in that he can make Tarkin not sound like a Kenobi and AP5 and Admiral Raddus. He's really got quite a range. Right. Yeah. I know what you mean. It's almost like he's a vocal chameleon. Exactly. You just don't hear anything. At least, I'm a layman, right? With this stuff, so I wouldn't have been able to tell him from Adam. If you played him for me and didn't tell me who it was. Right? No, I wouldn't have guessed. I wouldn't have guessed at all. Now, that's the thing. Every time there's a new voice on this show that we don't know that they brought someone specifically, I'm going to wonder if it was Steve Stanton. But he did fantastic work here. So you mentioned the no hello there line from Kenobi, but I did like the you're in the wrong place, Ezra Bridger. I thought that was Kenobi-esque right there. And they teased us during the trailer for this episode because that line was introduced with a shot of Kenobi immediately followed up with Maul standing there. So we kind of got the idea that Kenobi was going to say that to Maul, and he didn't. Yeah, and I thought it was kind of, well, at least it wasn't lost on me that he knew who Ezra was. Ezra never said, hey, I'm Ezra, so obviously Kenobi's got some knowledge going on. Happening. I can't help but wonder with that, the deleted scene or the deleted part of the scene from Revenge of the Sith was Yoda was teaching Kenobi to commune with Qui-Gon, to these people who have become one with the Force. And I believe that Qui-Gon is probably also communing with Yoda, and we know that Yoda has talked to Ezra Bridger. So I suspect we got a bit of a telephone tag going on there. And that this development that there is this young Force user out there making his way that suitably impressed Yoda to the point that he turned over a kyber crystal. At one point at the end of towards the end of season 1. So he's got some idea of who he is, and then the Force is evolving in different ways through Rebels than what we've seen in Clone Wars and the movies. So perhaps Kenobi is using some sort of, through his meditations, is able to discern things about Force users like Ezra that come to Tatooine. Of course, he could have just looked at his underwear and saw his name tag. That's where you would go, right? Or Chopper, I suppose, even could have told him. Who, by the way, was really happy. Oh yeah, well he was back. He was awake again, which means power. And we had that great do back there. I love that they created that model for this episode because there hasn't been dewbacks in Rebels.
Yeah, that's a good point. And man, somehow Kenobi just got his pick of the stock, you know. Eopie, dewbacks, you know, the whole night. I thought a dewback was an interesting choice for him.
Oh yeah. Well, I liked it. I was glad to see it.
Me too.
So Kenobi attempts to put Ezra back on the right track, and the lessons that Kanan has been attempting to teach Ezra, well, for this season and the last season,
right,
and probably even in the first season, about not rushing off, avoiding these traps, not just not acting rashly all the time,
right.
Coupled with these things about the truth that Kenobi like to spit out to Luke later, which is what I told you was true from a certain point of view when he talks about Vader betraying Luke's father and killing him. That kind of comes up here, which is he says to Ezra, you saw basically what you wanted to see in the holocron, and that's true. He wanted to see the solution to defeating the Sith. And so he saw twin sons. He knew a Jedi Master was around because that's what Maul wanted. Maul wanted to find out about Kenobi. And so those visions combined, and Ezra was determined to believe that the answer to defeating the Sith was on Tatooine. There's a Jedi Master there. It's Kenobi. Kenobi is the key to defeating the Sith. Yeah, so obviously what Kenobi's not telling him is no, I'm not the key to defeating the Sith. I'm protecting the key to defeating the Sith.
But doesn't he say something like, well, I haven't been told, or
exactly
something to that effect? Yeah. That's it's so funny because, I mean, to me, I just felt not sorry, but Ezra's just trying to figure out anything, isn't he? He's just like, he's thinking to himself, I've got this, This is the end stroke. This is going to win it for us, and he's, of course, limited in his vision, right? So he doesn't see the long game involved with this, with Luke and the redemption and et cetera, et cetera. He just sees Kenobi and just thinks, there it is. That's what I asked the Holocrons, and they said that he would be the one that does it.
Yeah. One of the other things that Kenobi says is, the first thing he says to Ezra is, "You're in the wrong place," and then points out to him, Maul coming to Tatooine and calling you has changed some things. It's made things happen in a way that they weren't supposed to.
Right.
And I've seen online, and especially in the RetroZap group on Facebook, there's been a great discussion there. If you aren't a member of the RetroZap Facebook group, I suggest you go there. I had started a discussion thread for this episode on Sunday, and it's really taken off. There's some absolutely fantastic conversation. But there's this notion that, well, what did Kenobi mean by that? And we're going to fast forward a little bit, and then we'll come back to the climactic duel here in a second. Okay. But Kenobi sends Ezra on his way, and Ezra actually listens to him and leaves and takes Maul's ship and returns to Chopper Base, where he apologizes to Hera and Kanan, tells them that they're not going to have to worry about Maul anymore, and acknowledges that he was wrong, but that his place is with them, that they are his family, and they need to go home, which is obviously Lothal. And Hera had mentioned earlier in the beginning of this episode that they've been planning this attack on Lothal. Ezra knows Lothal better than anybody. She needs him. She's relying on him. But do you think there's anything more to it than that Kenobi was suggesting that Ezra's destiny and future lied someplace else? Because he also says to Ezra, you have everything you need to fight the Empire and to defeat to take on the Empire. And, you coming here is because Maul tricked you into it. It wasn't because of anything the Holocrons did. Yeah. Maul played upon what you wanted to hear, what you wanted to see, and got you to come here.
I really don't know. I mean, could you imagine? Okay, maybe Kenobi saw Ezra's future, right? Maybe he knows how he's going to go out. Let's just say that.
But always in motion, the future is.
That's true, and he even admits that by Ezra doing this, things have changed, right? So, but he would be of a certain point of enlightenment, I guess you might say, to where, I mean, he's not going to tell Ezra what's going to happen, of course, but he's not going to betray that Ezra meets a fate at a certain point. I just don't know.
Okay, well, here's my take on it. I don't believe that Kenobi knows the future. I think the answer to this question really comes from his exchange with Maul, which is, Maul says, look what you have become. You're desert rat. And there's more to that conversation in a second, but let's just focus on this exchange for what it means about Ezra and things. And then Maul asks Kenobi, why would you come here? Why would you exile yourself to this desolate planet? And then it dawns on him, well, you wouldn't have come here if you did, without a purpose. Yeah. You're protecting something. No, you're protecting someone. And that's when Kenobi realizes that he has no choice. Right. That he has to defeat Maul at this point, because obviously we're talking about Luke. And so, to me, this conversation about Ezra being in the wrong place, I think the answer to that is he's supposed to be with Hera. He's supposed to be with Kanan and the rebels, and he's supposed to be working with the rebellion to fight that war, to bring that fight to Lothal. He's not, by coming to Tatooine, he put a hyper focus on a place that did not need that focus, because he's trying to hide Luke right under the Emperor's nose, right under Darth Vader's nose, just like the Emperor, as you pointed out, was right under everyone's nose during the prequels. Mm-hmm. And, and Kenobi's been hiding in essentially plain sight, but no one knows him as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's just Ben Kenobi. Right. Luke has been hidden under plain sight. And Ezra coming here, now means that, Kenobi has no choice but to face Maul, and it puts at risk everything that they've got going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really considered that. But I also point out that maybe that helped out in a weird way, because what if Maul had discovered Luke by himself? Well,
then Kenobi would have done something anyway. But yeah, I don't believe that Kenobi thought that Maul was going to. Maul was so obsessed and driven with finding Kenobi and getting his revenge or dying in Kenobi's hand that it wasn't until he got to that campfire that he stopped and considered what in the world Kenobi was doing there in the first place.
It's like, well, I found you. Now what do I do with you?
Well, it's been an obsession. So let's now move to what this duel. Okay. They exchanged some words beforehand, and what do you think was up with this? Because I'm not convinced Maul was certain he was going to win that fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Maul went there almost as an end to the pain.
One way or the other?
Yeah. I just don't know what. I mean, the only thing he would have had going for him is killing Kenobi, right? Mm-hmm. But if he killed Kenobi, what would the point of his existence been?
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. He's, his opportunity to rule the galaxy is kind of behind him. He made that comment to Ezra that I'll see you later, apprentice. And maybe if he had defeated Kenobi at that point, he would have attempted to sway Ezra again to the dark side, taken him as apprentice, and then gotten his revenge. Or if he, having discerned what Kenobi was doing there, maybe he would have found Luke and tried, and done his own version of the prophecy, which was, take Luke as an apprentice and try and get revenge on Darth Vader and the Emperor with Luke. That would have been fascinating. But I don't know. I'm not certain that Maul really thought he could win. He was defeated. He should have died at Kenobi's hand in the Phantom Menace when he was sliced in half. And he had multiple fights with Kenobi since then. And despite all of his grand schemes, Kenobi was always in the way, and he's got nothing left but his revenge for Kenobi. Without that revenge, I just don't know that he's got anything else. I'm not, so I don't have much else to say on that until after we get to the duel itself.
Yeah.
So finally, once Kenobi realizes that it's too dangerous for Maul to go on, and now knowing why Kenobi was there, he ignites his saber, and they face off. They change their stance a couple times, and then, as you pointed, as we were discussing earlier,
right,
that duel was what, 3 blows and done.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, that's it. And I know everybody's been talking about how Maul tried to do the same move they did to Qui-Gon.
Right. I love that.
Yeah, that was that was a nice treat.
And to me, that's one of the reasons why I'm not certain that Maul really planned on surviving the fight. Because Kenobi's seen that. Yeah. And he would have known, having seen it before, he would have known how to, at this point, he would have maybe been expecting it or knew how to defend against it.
And also, I kind of like how this sort of paves the way for, okay, so the Jedi were all jumpy and everything back in the prequels, but yet when Obi-Wan is facing off with Vader in A New Hope, the action's really, really, really limited.
Right. I agree. This was a quicker version of A New Hope style of fighting.
Yeah.
And less that acrobatic swirling around as much, high energy style that was featured in the prequels.
Well, it's funny because I remember first hearing that theory. I think it was Joe Tavano that mentioned it, and when I saw the duel on this episode, I immediately thought of Miyamoto Musashi, if I'm not butchering his name, and he is probably the most renowned Japanese swordsman around circa 1600 AD. And he wrote his teachings in what's called the Book of the Five Rings. And in it, he has just one section, I think, that sums it up. If I can pull it up here. And he's really, really, really harsh on his other martial artists at the time. He was in over 60 individual duels and won every single one of them because he kind of didn't do what they expected him to do, right? And he says this about everybody else at the time. The field of martial arts is particularly rife with flamboyant showmanship, with commercial popularization and profiteering on the part of both those who teach the science and those who study it. The result of this must be, as someone said, that amateuristic martial arts are a source of serious wounds. So even back then, he's saying, you don't need to do all this extra stuff. You just need to figure out how to win. And I think that's what translates into this scene with the duel, is that Obi-Wan just, he knew what to do to win, and he made it in 3 moves.
Right, exactly.
Most sword fights occur, we see it in the movies and everything else. It takes minutes, forever. We think about The Princess Bride, for example. In fencing, I think it's usually about 2-3 strokes and it's over. It doesn't take long at all. So I thought that was great, and plus it kind of paved the way for a little bit more of the, why do we see Vader and Obi-Wan really squaring off against each other? It's because they don't want to make that mistake, that's going to end up getting them killed, So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was extremely pleased by the duel. I really like the way that turned out. I know a lot of people, and it's not an invalid opinion, we're thinking that this received so much hype from at least the halfway point of the season. For it to be that short may have been a disservice. And that's an opinion, and it's a perfectly valid one. But I really like the way it turned out. It seemed to be the way. We'll got a couple emails I want to get to in your second. Okay. But I want to touch on just 2 last things here before we do.
Yeah, sure.
I kind of liked Kenobi's sympathy and empathy for Maul after he had essentially dealt the mortal wound to him. He caught him in his arms and laid him down and listened to him. And then when Maul finally passed, closed his eyes. And Maul brought Kenobi a fair amount of pain over the years, and I think Kenobi knew that he was by dealing with that fight the way he did, he hadn't been planning on fighting Maul, but finally giving in, he did grant Maul some peace that he may or may not have deserved.
Yeah, especially when Maul's asking why is Obi-Wan there, and by saying it's the chosen one, isn't it?
Right. Which
is interesting because have we ever heard the Sith discuss the prophecy before?
I don't think so, but it was a common knowledge type of thing amongst the Force users. Certainly Sidious and Palpatine, slash Palpatine would have heard about it because he was, as much as he annoyed the Jedi and vice versa. Anakin was being mentored by both, and so I knew he knew, and I don't think this was a secret. I think this is something that Maul probably came across rather in his Force meditations as well. What's that exchange though, I think, is throwing a lot of people. Well, does this mean for certain that Luke was the chosen one? And it's kind of an issue that people will take anything that comes out of Kenobi's mouth or a lot of Star Wars characters' mouths as the gospel. That's what it is. It's not like they could possibly be wrong. If someone said, Tarkin said that, Darth Vader was the last remains of the Jedi, the fire has gone out of that religion. Well, we know that not to be the case.
Right.
But still, people will quote that all the time is why Kanan and Ezra shouldn't be around. Well, Tarkin was clearly wrong. We knew that because Kenobi and Yoda were still around. Yeah. So I think this was Kenobi's point of view. And, ultimately, Luke was a tool for Anakin to bring balance to the Force and get the revenge. But you could do an entire episode just talking about the chosen one and who was a chosen one. And there's been tens of thousands of words written about that by people who are far more eloquent than myself.
Yeah.
So
I know more than I do.
I believe Kenobi thinks that Luke is the chosen one at this point, but I don't know that jives with the way that the end of the Sith is brought about. But anyway,
did you notice the music that was playing during that scene?
I don't think I did.
It's a lot like, I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to it, but it sounds a lot like Qui-Gon's funeral music.
Okay. Well, that's a nice touch.
Which is very fitting.
All right, so we talked briefly about Ezra going back to Chopper Base. He apologizes to Harry and Kanan, says he realizes his place is with them, as his family. He kind of vows to stop falling for these antics. I hope that's the case. I kind of feel like if he does not do that, then he really is taking a big step towards the dark side. Yeah. My fear all along is that, much like Anakin's concerns for Padme were what drove him towards making those terrible decisions to try and make the worst possible moves to try and learn that knowledge that might keep her alive. Well, then he doomed her and himself and fell to the dark side. That Ezra's friends are going to be that for him. That his obsession with defeating the Sith and protecting his friends and defeating the Empire were going to lead him to make those same mistakes. I think he's close to that if he continues to do these type of things, but I hope Kenobi got him set on the right path here.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of kind of a reset in his compass, you might say. Mm-hmm. Like he understands maybe his place is where he's at, right? If he trusts in the will of the Force, yeah, I think so. I just kind of man, if I was Hera, I'd be really ticked.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask you one quick question? Going back to Maul. Do you think Maul saw the future in his final moment?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I think Maul found peace, and and the one thing he wanted to know was if there was going to be some sort of revenge against Sidious for what he did to him, for casting him out, for abandoning him. And Kenobi kind of gave him that assurance, which is the last thing he needed to hear before he passed. So I don't think he saw the future. But, well, then the episode ends on a great shot. Kenobi is striding across the desert on the back of that dewback, and he comes across the Lars homestead, and you hear Aunt Beru calling out to Luke, that classic Luke.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's all she does is call after that guy. But and then you saw the silhouette of Luke running back, running across the homestead back to home. I love that with the Force theme playing in the background. And I watched this episode both on the app, the Disney XD app, and I watched it on television. And I loved that when they played it on television, they did not crop the credits to half the screen while they were promoting something else below it.
Yeah.
They let those credits flow and they played the music. That episode deserved that treatment and that handling at the end, and they did that. So good on them. Good on Disney for that.
That was really the actress's voice.
They just take it from New Hope.
They took it from another clip that they had, sort of like what they did with Gold Leader, but only with audio. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, well, say it, Taxus.
Silence, fools!
Say it correctly, Taxus.
Silence, fools!
There you go. We got a couple emails regarding this episode. We don't have a ton of time, so let's try and get these quickly here. It says, first one is from our buddy Swara. He says, hello, Scoundrels. Wow, first off, this was a very good episode that respected the integrity of the central Star Wars story. Obi-Wan's name was not mentioned once on Tatooine. We only see Luke from a far distance at the end. Tears welled up for me at that part. And the cinematography was beautifully haunting. Stephen Stanton was a perfect Ben Kenobi, and Sam Witwer had an amazing swan song as Maul. Hopefully he has another main role soon. The fight was all it needed to be and had incredible depth in its execution. The parallels with the last part of the Duel of Fates were spot on. That Maul would arrogantly use the same move on Obi-Wan that he had used to kill Qui-Gon, and that Obi-Wan was prepared for it, was amazing. Looks like he had to slice him both horizontally and vertically before he died. LOL. Yeah, that's true. The other parallel with Qui-Gon's death and Maul also discussing the Chosen One while also in Qui-Gon's Obi-Wan's arms was profound. Perfect ending to his arc, in my opinion. That's a good point. It's a great symmetry between Qui-Gon's death and Maul's death, and Obi-Wan being there for both, holding him in his arms. Good observation by Swara.
In fact, like we were saying, the music even was similar to it. And he just reminded me of something. Do you remember hearing, when they were setting up for the duel,
no, I didn't catch
whispering? That. Go back and listen to it. You hear the whispering.
I've seen this episode 4 times. I just didn't catch that.
I know, there's a lot to it, huh?
All right, and then he concludes, my only half gripe is Ezra. Big surprise, LOL. He didn't need to be on Tatooine, but at the same time, we know this is his show and that we'd have to follow him. What I appreciated most about him was Master Kenobi showing up and telling him, this isn't your story, go back to yours. For once, he finally follows authority. Let's see how long that lasts. Hope the season finale is also great and they don't kill Thrawn. May the Force be with you, Swara Salih. And then he's, of course, on Twitter at Swara Salih 1. Another great email from Swara. I beginning to feel like I'm in the minority on this, that Ezra had to be there. This was a shared vision he had with Maul, going back to Holocrons of Fate and Visions and Voices. Like I said earlier, I really hope this is the straw that gets him back on the right path and not chasing after these quick solutions to save his friends. But I understand a lot of people's opinion that the story should have been about Obi-Wan and Maul, but I like the execution better. That with them showing up at the end and Ezra being the tool that gets them there. I found it poetic.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why. Yes, you're right. And it is the Ezra Bridger story, basically, is what we're watching. And, I hadn't really thought of Ben's admonishment in the same context that Swara just put. So that's really funny. That's a good point. Get back to your own book.
All right. Well, we've got another email. So thanks, Swara, for that one. But this one is from Jason Flatt, who is a relatively new retro zapper. It says, I watched Twin Sons, and the whole time I'm just like, who is this red guy and why is it on Tatooine? Is he here to enter a sandcastle building contest? I then proceeded to imagine whether the sands of Tatooine turned to glass when lightsabers heated up. The red guy probably could probably make a pretty decent living for himself turning that sand to glass appliances for the locals. And think, with a two-sided saber, he can even work twice as fast. And if the product breaks, well, no big deal. The sand is endless. Of course, I'm kidding. I know who the red guy is. That's our good buddy and far hardest working at Jim. I'm throwing shade at you, Mr. Kanan, mentor Maul. Now, the old guy doing an Alec Guinness impression is totally unfamiliar to me. Where'd they pull that guy from? The back of some old reference guide? Anyway, on the reels. I enjoyed the episode, though the hype for it was kind of a bit much to me. I think it's really interesting how, in spite of all of the talk Kenobi does with Ezra about the truth and how it's what we make of it, it's himself who is the victim of misinterpreting the truth when he claims that Luke is the chosen one. We know that while Luke was integral to the real chosen one fulfilling his destiny, Anakin truly held that moniker the whole time. Even Obi-Wan is too clouded by hatred to see the ultimate truth. But that's why Luke is the new hope, and why it took Luke being a blank slate to ultimately take down the Emperor. At least Obi-Wan and Yoda and the bunch got that right. Not training Luke from a young age to adhere to the Jedi mumbo jumbo that got them into this mess, probably at least in the first place. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Jason Flatt, who is again a writer at RetroZap and the host and producer of Holy Star Wars. Yeah, that's a really good email. I really liked Jason's thoughts there, that especially concerning Kenobi, that he didn't really take his own advice to heart. So
I like his point about Luke being the blank slate. It's almost like, and I can't believe it took me this long to figure this out, but that the whole hate, the whole hate thing that led Anakin down his path was countered by Luke's perfect love and Luke's reckless love, you might say.
Right.
And he didn't learn that from the Jedi. He learned that from his friends. Who he's with through thick and thin. Even Biggs, to a certain extent. His uncle and aunt. He doesn't go to join the rebellion or to go save the princess out of some sense of vengeance. He's got nothing left there. The only reason he was staying there is because of his love for his uncle and his aunt. So, those are good points. I like that.
Yeah, I think this is an episode that we could talk about for another hour if we had the chance, but we are just about out of time. So why don't you go ahead and give us your final thoughts and your grade for this episode?
I was a little at first befuddled about the whole Ezra kind of sticking his nose into the thing, but this episode was really, really great on like so much kind of forced level. Plus the closure, the circle of life. It's like Maul's destiny, his fate was suspended back on Naboo, right? Mm-hmm. And now he can't beat his fate. He actually, but the thing is, he had the power to beat his fate the entire time. But he goes back and he rushes headlong into it. Sort of like, kind of reminds me of Lieutenant Dan, it was supposed to be me that died, it's almost like that, like a moth back to the flame. And so he gets his wish, it's kind of a fitting end. Sometimes, the idiot only gets his wish with death, you might say the corner phrase.
So what's your final grade?
I'm going to give it a 98.
Yeah. Well, that's the grade I was going to give it, so I'll say that right up front. It gets 98 for me. I think I love this episode because the more I think about it, the more I discuss it with people online, our conversation here tonight, Taxus, the more I find to appreciate about it. And the emails we got from Jason and Swara here were awesome. I wish we had more time to discuss those as well because they raised a lot of great thoughts. I just did with this. I mean, I think Maul's had a really interesting legacy in Rebels. He helped at the end. He created problems, but he helped develop Ezra into this character that he's learning in the Force, he's developing in the Force. And at the end of the day, we're getting another season after this. I'm anxious to see, or eager to see, where he's going to be next year. It's kind of helped us maybe understand Obi-Wan a little bit better and what he was doing on Tatooine and his point of view. And and what it was like for that hermit there at the end, and this uneasy relationship that, uneasy, disastrous relationship that Maul and Obi-Wan had. So again, I give it a 98. Great episode. Great. One of my favorites. So, okay. Well, that's going to about do it then for this Scoundrels Special Edition. If you want to reach us on social media, we are SQPod on Twitter. Darth Taxus is at Darth Taxus, and I am at DJKVER2. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/SQPod. We love getting your email, so send us your Rebels thoughts to SQPod@RetroZap.com. If you would like to support us, we would appreciate an iTunes review. We haven't had one of those for a while, very long while at this point. So I'd love to get another one and read one on the show sometime soon. And that'd be really great if we could get a few for episode 25 coming up next week.
Yeah.
Anyway, Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, we are official supporters of Star Wars Celebration Orlando, which is April 13th to 17th at the Orange County Convention Center. You can get your tickets at StarWarsCelebration.com, and we can't wait to see you there. Also, we are at we're going to be at the Fan Expo Dallas, March 31st through April 2nd at the Dallas Convention Center. You can get your tickets for that at fanexpodallas.com. If you're in the area, be on the lookout. Darth Taxus will be unmistakable.
Yes.
I will probably blend in a little bit better, but we'll be around. So make sure you check out all the other great shows in the RetroZap Podcast Network. Beltway Banthas is celebrating their anniversary. They had a good episode on that. Yeah, Newscast Movie Show recently gave out their doozies for the best and worst movies of 2016. That was a very, very fun show. And Techno Retro Dads is always, of course, looking back in the 70s and 80s. So check them out. There's plenty of shows on the RetroZap Podcast Network for all kinds of fans. So with that, you got any final thoughts, Taxus?
Yeah, I'm just, they're going to really have to wow us next week, aren't they?
Well, they got a full hour to do it. So I
sure do.
All right. Well, that's going to do it then for this episode of Starship, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
Tell me, is it the chosen one?
He is.
He will avenge us.